Hello and welcome to the 7th episode of Lighthouse. I'm Chris and this is my sister Kristen, and today we have a mad program lined up for everyone and we're so hyped you're here.
Lighthouse is our way of showing God's light into your house during these challenging times. Later in today's episode, we'll be announcing the winner of the controversial Resurrection Skit competition, so make sure you don't miss out.
So, Kristen, unlike what Jazz and Josh mentioned in the last episode, this is actually the closest I've been to you in the last 6 weeks.
Well, we can thank your never-ending Zoom sessions and your video games for that. Thanks, I actually forgot what you look like.
Yeah, well, look, I, on the other hand, have felt your presence around the house, you know, because every once in a while I go on hourly adventures to the kitchen and there's nothing in the pantry. Yeah, thanks for that.
Don't be ridiculous. It's not just the pantries, it's the 2 freezers, the 2 fridges, and even Mum's secret stash of goodies.
What? Mum has a secret stash of goodies? Bro, where? Wait.
If you give me a $10 note right now, I'll tell you after the show.
Bro, always asking for money, man. So dogged. Every time.
On that note, we've got a video here for you guys, recorded of our nearest and dearest's reaction of us hosting the 7th episode of Lighthouse.
Mum, they've asked me to host youth meeting on Friday night. Do you think I should do it?
Oh, is Chris going to be doing it with you? Please take Chris. You know he goes to UC and he also plays the guitar and he sings so beautifully.
How many kings stepped down from their thrones? How many lords have prepared their homes? How many... No, stop. I don't have autotune. No.
Meanwhile,
Oh, win the ball. Finish. 1, 2. Ref, that's a pen. Ref. Hello.
Hey, Alan.
Hey, how are ya?
Good. Guess what?
Yeah, what's up?
They've asked me and Chris to host youth meeting on Friday night.
Wait, what? What youth meeting?
You know the Lighthouse, E07 youth meeting, Friday night?
The one on TV?
Yeah, that one.
Oh, that's mad. That's awesome. I hope you guys do really well. Hey, listen, I gotta go. I'll call you back, yeah? I need to do some work. I'll call you back. Bye. Marcus Gander. Mark, is Kristen Chris doing the show on Friday? What do you mean? I thought I'm doing it. How can you not pick me? Bro, do you want the show to do well and get views and ratings? Do you want sponsorships or do you want it to crash? How am I gonna get famous, bro? You know what, Mark? You're fired as my agent, bro. I'm done with you, bro.
A huge shout out to Steph Williams for editing that video within like 5 minutes and actually making it funnier than it already was. Next up is a fan favourite segment curated by the infamous Hymns team, singing together Christ is Risen. Chris, what are you doing?
Am I not the Hymns team?
I think we've just seen that you sound like a dying cat without your auto-tune. Put the guitar down and find a new hobby, thanks.
That was kind of rude. It's a ukulele as well. Whatever, man.
If anyone is a devout lover of God, enjoy this beautiful, radiant festival. If anyone is a servant, then let him rejoice. And enter into the joy of his Lord. Let him now receive his reward. Christ is risen and life reigns. O death, where is thy sting? O hate, where is thy victory? is risen, life reigns. If anyone labors from the first hour, let him today receive his reward. If anyone arrives at the 11th hour, let him not fear on account of delay. For the Master is gracious and gives his rest to all. Christ is risen and life reigns. O death, where is thy sting? O hate, where is thy victory? Christ is risen, you are the throne. Christ is risen, demons are fallen. Christ is risen, and the angels rejoice. Christ is risen, no dead remains in a tomb. Christ is risen, life reigns. Christ is risen, life reigns. Enter all into the joy of our Lord. First or last, receive your reward. You who are rich and you who are poor. Dance for joy and celebrate. Oh, you who have fasted and you that have not, whether first or last, receive your reward. For the Savior's death has set us free. Set us free. Set us free. Let all partake of the feast of faith. Let all receive the riches of his goodness. Let no one mourn his transgressions. For pardon has dawned from the grave. Let all partake of the feast of faith. Let all receive the riches of his goodness. Let no one mourn his transgression. For pardon has dawned from the grave. For the Savior's death has set us free.
The hymns.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
Shout out to the hymns team. That was awesome. But between you and me, guys, would have been a tiny bit better if I was on it. Just my opinion. Anyway, just joking. Moving on to the main reason why we're here. Tonight we're lucky enough to have a man who's been likened by Abu from Aladdin by some people. But yeah, thank you for joining us, Bossy.
You will have the opportunity to ask Bossy your questions on the live on the show. And if you wish to do so, please call us on 0416 551 292. And you can also send your questions via Slido using the hashtag Lighthouse.
Yeah. So Bossy, besides living at church 24/7, what have you been up to in your spare time?
Yeah, I didn't see that question coming
Yeah.
at all. Nah. Man, who doesn't like church? Church, nice food,
Exactly.
nice
Yeah.
people. The Wi-Fi is strong.
Yeah.
But no, it's been nice trying to do things outside of church, especially with Sunday school, really trying to get creative with ideas. So yeah, it's been a nice time, but it's nice to be with you guys here as well.
Well, welcome to the show, Bossy. We're so excited to have you here. But I'm sure everyone at home is also wondering, as myself, what are those little finger puppets you got on your fingers there?
Oh, there's no way that's on the script. Nah, these are finger warmers. I got them from eBay. Don't tell me you never heard of finger warmers.
Yeah, you know, finger warmers, like the gloves that cover, you know, all of your fingers,
Yeah.
not just four of them. Is that right?
Whoa, security, what's going on?
No, come on, Crystal, let's stop roasting the poor guy. He's a guest on our show, so let's make him feel welcome.
All right, we'll take it easy.
Yeah,
we'll
Bossy, take us away with your wise words.
Alright, maybe we'll just start. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, oh God, amen. So yeah, the topic we're speaking about is fear of the disciples. I think it's a beautiful thing that we can see and have an account of the weakness of people in the Bible. It makes us relate to them, especially with the disciples. So after Jesus' crucifixion and death, they lost a companion, a friend, someone who they believed to be the Messiah. He was a man of miracles and they saw so much from him. And all of a sudden, he was beaten, he was spat upon, he became a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. So they went from that to that. And I think it's, you know, as we said, it's great to see that weakness. And when we say weakness, we also mean the shortcomings of other people. So if we look at other examples in the Bible, we have Gideon. Gideon was a man who kept doubting himself and he always asked for a sign from God. It's as if he wanted God to hold his hand the whole way. Moses, he kept telling God, you chose the wrong guy, I can't even speak. St. Peter, which I think we'll hear about soon, is a good example. He denied Christ, even though he was so adamant that he would never deny him, but he still denied him. And just last week, we celebrated the Feast of St. Mark. In the Gospel of St. Mark, it's written that there was a young man who fled and ran away naked. Now, most scholars believe that that person who ran away naked was actually St. Mark. Of course, St. Mark, out of humility, didn't want to write his name as that person. But yeah, these are all weaknesses we can relate to, except the running away naked one. None of us can relate to that one. Yeah. Although there is this one guy that I can think of who can relate to that, but I won't mention his name. But yeah, we all have weaknesses. So for example, I'm thinking of a certain PlayStation game. It's called Brawlhalla. I know of some people who are trash at that game. You know, that's their weakness.
Yeah, I think I know some as well. Chris, don't you?
Nah, not at all. Yeah. I'm the one after me this game, bro. I swear to God knows.
So you guys have heard of that game?
Yeah.
Of course. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Professional.
For those watching at home, it's just a silly game on PlayStation. Similar to Street Fighter. Just forget I mentioned that point. Very silly, so let's just move on. So back to the weakness idea. It shows us that weak people need each other. There's a really nice quote which I'll read for you guys. It's from Leonardo da Vinci, and he once said, "An arch consists of two weaknesses, so which lean against each other, they make a strength." So we need each other for support. It reminds me and my sister used to walk to school, right? And on the way, after we get off the bus, we have to walk this high road back home, and it was a really high hill. So, like, you know, after a long day, we decided to just lean on each other's shoulder and just like you walk together shoulder to shoulder. Have you guys done that before?
Yeah, look, we weren't really friends growing up, so probably not.
Valid, yeah.
All right, well, moving on. So yeah, we mentioned that the disciples were afraid, and that's their shortcoming. They were afraid after Jesus was arrested and crucified. So I wanted to ask you guys, why do you guys think maybe that they were afraid?
Well, I think that they're human. I think it was natural for them to be afraid.
100%, exactly.
Yeah, beautiful. I think disciples were mainly afraid because they thought the same thing would happen to them. So in John chapter 20, verse 19, it says, Then the same day, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut, where the disciples were assembled, for fear of the Jews. They were afraid that what happened to Jesus would happen to them. And naturally, they were scared of the power of the Jews because they didn't know the power of Jesus yet. So even though they witnessed so many miracles, so many healings, to them, he died as a failure. So they didn't witness his resurrection yet. And you and I do this. We know stories of God. We know he's powerful. We know he's capable. But we still lack that connection. You know, we know his hand runs the whole world, but we still fear. Why? What do we have in common with the disciples? Just a rhetorical question. So yeah, one reason I really think is that the disciples didn't know him. Okay, and we're also sometimes afraid because we don't know Christ. One of our priests at church, he always says the same story every Passion Week. He says a story about a monk. His name is Abuna Abdul Masih al-Habashi. And he says that this monk was a hermit, right? And he used to live in a cave, and every maybe Sunday he would come visit the monastery. In a certain week, instead of visiting on the Sunday, he came on a Tuesday, and all the monks said to him, "Oh, what are you doing here? You know, this isn't the day you usually come." And he said to them, "Don't you know Abuna so-and-so is dead in his cell? How do you guys not know?" So they went and checked that cell, and they actually found that monk was dead. So later on, they came up to Abuna Abdul Masih and they said to him, "How did you know? Like, how did you know this monk died?" And he said to them a really nice saying, "You don't know Christ." So that's another reason I believe sometimes we fear and the disciples feared. They didn't know Christ properly. Actually, me and my friends, we always have a bet if that Abuna will say that same story every year or not. I don't know why I said that. Anyway, we'll move on. So yeah, they were afraid because they didn't fully know him. And that's why on the way to the tomb on Easter Sunday, when the women went to the tomb, the angel said to them something really nice. The angel said to them, "Whom are you seeking?" So it's as if to say, who was he to you? Whom are you seeking? Are you seeking the dead among the living? Or what is it? The living among the dead. So do you even know the one whom you're seeking? So it's the same question for me and you. Second point, I think, is that it's the fear of the unknown. They didn't know what was going to happen to them. As you mentioned, they're human and they're weak. I know a friend of mine this week, he was telling me that, you know, usually he's a cool, calm, collected person, but all of a sudden he had a probation review for his work. All of a sudden he became scared. Why? He didn't know what was going to happen to him. Maybe all his hard work was going to go down the drain. Maybe, you know, things were going to turn sour. The fear of the unknown, and he thought to himself, I have something to lose. So those are probably 2 points that I think. But this leads us to the next question. Do you think sometimes it's wrong to be afraid?
I don't think it's wrong to be afraid. I think, like from my comment before, I think we're human. I think it's natural for us to be afraid. And there's so many events that happen in the Bible that when Christ appears himself to the people in the Bible, or the people in the Bible, he would say, "Do not be afraid." So I think it's only natural for us to be afraid, so then we can then find comfort in trusting his words.
Yeah, it's one of humans' flaws, 100%.
Yeah, I really agree. Like, I was just having this thought that where did the emotion of fear come from? Like, you know, everything that we have as human beings is from God. God gave us the emotion of fear, even doubt, all these things, even jealousy, all these things are from God. And I think it's just the way we use it. So doubt essentially is not a bad thing, you know. Doubt can come and eats away the old roots so that new and stronger roots are built in. Same with fear. We have to overcome that fear so that we know Christ more and more. I really like the verse in Matthew chapter 26, verse 31. I'll read it for you guys. It says, Jesus says to his disciples on the night of Gethsemane, he says to them, "All of you will be made to stumble because of me this night." And it's as if Jesus is telling them it's a requirement for you to stumble. Why? Because I know if you stumble, when you rise, you'll be better. That's just my 2 cents on that verse. I'll tell you a story that I really liked once. One time we were sitting at youth meeting and somebody asked Abuna, "I'm always worried about money and I'm always afraid of my finances. Is that a bad thing?" And Abuna said to him, yes and no. So he gave him the analogy. If it's okay, you know, to go at home on your desk, get a pen and paper. If you're worried about your finances, you know, write it down. This is my plan, this is my budget. You know, but once you're finished, that's it. You're done, put it away, and that's it. But if you're always driving, my money, I need to do this to save money, my finances, this. If you're always thinking about that, I think that's where it's wrong. So I 100% agree with you guys. You know, these emotions are natural, but if in the wrong way, it can consume us. A long time ago, there was an Abuna. His name was Abuna Tadrus Malati. He came to Sydney a long time ago. And I was really young back then. And he just said something really nice. He said, don't ever belittle yourself. So I guess whenever we have these feelings, always remember that, yeah, these feelings are there, but we shouldn't let them overcome us and never let them belittle us. So we spoke about the disciples for a bit. Maybe we can speak about other people who, I guess, could have felt fear, but chose not to. So the example that I can think of straight away is the 3 youth in the fiery furnace. They said something really nice. So they were about to be delivered in the fire, and they said, "O King, live forever. We know God can deliver us. We know. But if He doesn't, He doesn't. And if He does, He does." So it's just that trust in God, because they know who God is. They know He can deliver. But if He doesn't, we still follow Him. He's God. And I really like that, knowing who God is. Another story, just to waste your time for 30 seconds. There's a bishop, his name is Amba Abraham of Fayoum. And this bishop was accused of wasting the money of the diocese, right? So this bishop had a meeting with the Pope. In that meeting, the Pope was going to tell him, look, that's it, you're done. We're giving this diocese to someone else. You know, you're bad at financial decisions. So Amba Abraham walked in. He took off his coat and he put it on what he thought was a string. Back then, they used to just put coats on a string. But it turns out, because his vision was so dim, that string was actually just a ray of light in the room. And when the Pope saw that, like, wow, this guy is a saint. Like, I can't mess with this guy. So instead of telling off the bishop, he's like, here, take more money for your diocese and please pray for me. And I really like that story because I think God really defends people. If you know God and you trust in Him, you know that He will defend you. In this instance, a ray of light saved Amba Abraham. So just a nice story that I remembered. But a hypothetical question or a rhetorical question that I want to ask you guys and everyone watching. What's stopping me from knowing Him? There are many answers, of course, but the one psalm I wanted to share with you guys is Psalm 66, verse 18. It says, "If I regard iniquity in my heart, the Lord will not hear." Another translation to this verse is, "If I had cherished sin in my heart, the Lord will not have listened." So it goes back to that example, I guess, that boy who had a probation meeting coming up. He was cherishing his job. And for us, the question tonight, what am I cherishing so much that it's hindering me from knowing Christ? What am I cherishing? A friend of mine once told me a story that, you know, he's in a relationship with a girl, and he's saying, look, like, at the end of the day, he's talking about himself. He's saying, I have to be content with the idea that, God forbid, if something happens to her, you know, she's walking on the street and she gets hit by a bus or whatever, and, you know, I lose her. Like, I have to be content that I can move on. Obviously, it's sad, but his cherish is with God, and, you know, like, he has to be content to move on. Okay, moving on. I wanted to ask you guys, so we spoke about the fear of the disciples, and we also know how the story turns out, how their fear became transformed. So how can we remove fears? How can our fear be transformed?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important to notice that we can transform our fear, like, as motivation to get closer to God. So I think we can remove our fear by knowing that deep inside, that getting closer to God will make us feel more powerful, make us more confident. So as a result, I think we can find motivation of getting closer to God. And as a result, that will remove our fear and transform it ultimately to a stronger relationship with God. So I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you mentioned God, because actually that's my first point. I was going to say, the person who has a why has a how. So when my why becomes God, that's my reason, then it doesn't matter. I'll find a how no matter what. So like you said, the person who has a why has a how. Second point, I guess, like the disciples, I think it's really essential that an encounter with Christ has to happen. It's possible and it's a must. Many people speak about the presence of God. It's true. And I think that, we have to ask ourselves, have I actually felt the presence of God? And if I haven't, maybe I can start praying more to feel God's presence more in my life. Some people speak about when they're reading the Bible. There's a story of Anthony Bloom. He's a priest, I think. He was reading the Gospel of Mark, and he was just, as he was reading, he said, I was sure that there was somebody on the other side of the table with me, and I couldn't put the book down. I think he was an atheist back then, or he wasn't a strong Christian, and after that his life turned around 360 degrees. So the encounter with Christ, I think, is essential. Another point I wanted to mention is the idea of meeting Christ in the liturgy. So obviously the body and blood and so on. But with that, I feel like you can't meet Christ in the liturgy if you don't meet him at home. That famous saying, whoever kneels with God in the room can stand up to anyone. Yeah. So, and it's like St. Peter. We know the story of St. Peter. He couldn't even confront a servant girl. Like, she asked him, you're a Galilean, your speech betrays you. He's like, what are you talking about? He couldn't even speak to a little girl. And after the resurrection, when he sees Christ, when he's restored, he preaches to 3,000 people and they're won over. So we have to meet Christ somehow. Point number 3 I wanted to mention, there's a verse in 1 John 4:18. It says, perfect love casts out fear. When we increase our love for God, I feel like that removes our fear, whatever fear we have. There's a really nice story of St. Anthony, just to waste your time a bit more. There's a monk that comes to see St. Anthony, and he tells him, look, I don't get it. I do more matanyas than you. I pray more than you. I read my Bible more than you. Why do people like you more than me? And St. Anthony gave him a very strong response, and he said to him, it's because I love God more than you. So yeah, perfect love casts out fear. It's a strong response, but I think it's true. Any action motivated by love counts more in the eyes of God. Point number 4, there's 6 points, so point number 4. As we were mentioning before, weakness is not a bad thing. If we look at Christ, Jesus was strong enough to become weak for our sake. So I don't think we should look at weakness as the opposite of strength, but rather it's like a coin. It's the two sides of the coin. And of course, Jesus says, it says in 2 Corinthians, it says, when we are weak, then we are strong. Point number 5 is a bit silly. Again, we're talking about how we can be transformed like disciples. So point number 5, I'm really sorry, it's a bit silly, but they're 4 powerful words. And those 4 words are, I changed my mind. And I think it's really important because as Christians, if we're growing in our spiritual life, if there's something we haven't changed our mind about, then we're not doing something right. I can't just have that same mentality I've always had. As I grow, I change my mind about things, how I see people, what I think about this, and this. So changing the mind, it's what happened to the disciples. They thought, that's it, it's done for us. Resurrection happened, they saw Christ, their minds were changed, their lives were changed. And the same with us. If we haven't changed our mind about something recently, I feel like that's a big factor as well. Point number 6, which is the last point, effort. I really believe that there needs to be some sort of effort. As we were saying, point number 1, where there's a why, there's a how. And that how will come naturally. Jesus says to the disciples, he tells the woman when he meets Mary Magdalene at the tomb, he says, tell my brethren to go to Galilee, there they shall see me. Why? Why go all the way to Galilee? Just, appear in front of them now. But no, effort is required. Tell them to go to Galilee, there they will see me. So I guess in conclusion, when we look at disciples, it's really nice to relate to their weakness. So as we spoke about characters in the Bible, so when we look at, for example, people saw a barren woman in Sarah, Abraham's wife. God saw the mother of all nations. When people saw a poor young shepherd boy, David, God saw a mighty king. And when people saw a poor prisoner in Joseph, God saw a really powerful minister in the future. If you listen to this talk and you got nothing out of it and you're like, yeah, look, I'm not scared about anything, I have no fear. I heard something really silly but really funny, which I'm going to share. If you're saying to yourself, yeah, you know what, I don't go clubbing, I don't do this, I'm sweet, whatever. Somebody said to me, yeah, so does my dog. My dog doesn't do this, my dog is the same as you. So a nice humbling point to remember that, you know, I'm good, I don't do this, yeah, so does my dog. So sorry to put that point there, but I just thought that was funny. But I'll just end with the last point. I really like Lee Strobel. He has a really nice talk on YouTube. It's about 55 minutes, and he explains there are 4 E's which really transformed the disciples. And anybody that has doubts and wants their fears removed, I really recommend to listen to that Lee Strobel talk. And he speaks about 4 E's: execution, early writings, empty tomb, and eyewitnesses. But that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening. Awesome. Glory be to God. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Bossy. I really enjoyed that talk, given it was so applicable to today's current situation. But if you guys at home have any questions to ask Bossy, send them through via Slido using hashtag Lighthouse, or give us a call on 0416 551 292.
Yeah. Awesome. So, moving on. As you know, we've been running a skit competition for the resurrection. Last week, we showed our 3 top entries, and today we're announcing the winner. It was a hard-fought contest filled with controversy, whispers of corruption, last-minute campaigning, and even using African kids to sway the votes. If you guys have seen some of the last-ditch, if you guys haven't seen some of the last-ditch efforts, head to Zion Youth Instagram page.
It was a really close call, but the end, 2 are better than 1. So we have decided to split the prize award, and first place goes to Sam Hannah and Daniel Marwad. No doubt, Dan is going to be quite upset considering how hard he worked to collect votes. In fact, we've got them both on the line here to talk about their wins.
Awesome. Hey.
Can you guys hear us?
Hello?
Oh,
yeah, what's nice?
Hey, Sam.
Sorry, I
Marwad.
missed the results. Did the results come?
Yeah. So you guys actually shared first place, Marwad and Sam.
Good job.
Good job, boys. So exactly. So
No, don't take God. Don't take God. This wasn't God. This was you and the forces of evil working together to rig this thing.
Mahmoud, I think it's time we tell people the truth.
I think it is. I agree. I've been telling the truth this whole time.
And the truth is?
Mark, you wanna confirm what I've been saying this whole time?
Basically, how this whole thing went down was the votes were stopped by a certain Marcus Skander, and what ended up happening was we had a group of people on the Gold Coast showcasing Sam's video to the crowd. They were all legitimate votes. Every single person that voted and took Sam into the lead was legitimate, and they thought Marwad was not worthy of a vote. And then Marwad found a little way, and he utilized his fiancée to try and get as many votes as possible by rigging the cachets and the community history. But we let that go. Until we discovered how he was getting about it, and so we again enforced youth on the Gold Coast to set up their own system, our own Bangladesh packet, and they also used Marwad's process, and somehow we ended up here where we're splitting the vote. Also, why does it look like Marwad's in the toilet?
I'll be honest. You caught me off guard. So back just to answer Mark, what actually did happen was Mark, like I'm not gonna like Mark's not lying. That kind of did happen. But what actually happened was Mark's votes were skyrocketing. Okay? The first thing I want everyone to know is that it was promoted as Sam's video. Mark only showed up in the picture like a few minutes ago. Okay? So that's kind of like part of the dodginess. The other thing is when Sam's votes skyrocketed, I was like, they must be doing something very dodgy to get those votes. So Marcus Skander told me, hey, you can actually rig the votes by refreshing your caches and all that kind of stuff. And then my poor fiance, what's that, Mark?
So would you agree that you were the first to cheat?
What? Let's ask the panel. What do you consider a legitimate vote?
Yeah.
Can a legitimate vote come from someone who hasn't even seen the video?
Definitely not.
They were
Definitely
themed.
not.
They were themed.
Oh, really? So you showed everyone at the university,
100,
you showed everyone at the library,
100
and
legitimate
everyone that voted rewatched the same video 5 times?
100 legitimate votes. Also, let me just mention, Mawad organised his own re-voting system where people exactly vote, and it didn't end up very well for Mawad the second time around either.
Guys, I'm just... Yeah, because everyone that would vote for me had already voted for me. So the only people that were left were your forces of evil. I mean, the ruler of this world is here.
I'm just thankful we split the prize. That's it. Thank God, and everyone's a winner. And I think we all sort of partake in this experience. It was quite nice.
I think.
Guys, by the way, that was look on a positive note. Who's that behind you, Mark? Do you have someone you're recruiting to constantly vote for you? D? You think he's alone? He's never alone. Sorry, Ammo? Yeah, I am. All right, sorry. So I'm at a public toilet.
Yeah.
Public toilet. This isn't CYC live shows or anything. No, don't worry.
Viewer discretion is advised, guys.
We hashed this all out in the morning, and despite everything that went down, we spoke about it, and we're happy to split this 50-50. Sam actually gets none of that prize money. That was a decision that was made by Mawad and myself, and Marcus Gander and the organisers, considering Sam was nothing but pretty faced throughout all the chaos.
Again, I had nothing to do with that.
What a face as well. What a face.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that wraps it up, everyone. We hope there's no hard feelings between all of you. Your skits were great, but it's how the turnout ended up to be.
They weren't, Chris. Let's be real. My skit sucked. I admit that.
Look,
but it was just about just honesty and integrity in this whole system.
Yeah. No, some of them were a bit more abstract. They can be interpreted in different ways. They're both to be inspired. So I think they're both
original. It was quite inspiring that they came up with this original idea by themselves.
Yeah.
Mawad, I've just received word. Are you in the toilet at Najee's next to Uncliffe?
Yes, I am.
All right, guys. Okay. With that, I think we should wrap it up. We don't need more toilet talk. All right.
I'm getting abused by someone, so I gotta go.
Yeah, that's it, guys. It was great having you.
Guys.
Congratulations, everyone. That was good.
So, who did you vote for, Chris?
Look, I'm Switzerland here, so I'm just wave a white flag.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Just, both was
very
great.
good, very good.
Yeah, I think that's the message. But it wasn't too bad. The videos are pretty good. What do you think
look, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, I reckon. But I'm all about the underdogs, just for Mawad.
Yeah, look, Karen Zaki's video was great as well. I don't think she should be forgotten. So,
that's true. That's a good point. We love you, Karen.
Yeah, Karen, that was awesome. But yeah, Mawad and Sam, good job, I guess. Yeah, Mawad could have put a tiny bit more effort into making it a bit more spiritual. But you know what? It's still good.
Okay, well, we do actually have a few Slido questions for Bossy, if that's okay. So the first question is, what are the practical ways of trying to detach ourselves from worldly desires? No doubts that hinder us from getting closer to God. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. I'll just give my 2 cents. I think some practical way is that you have to replace a desire with a desire. So naturally, like, I personally can't do anything for my own sake. Like, for example, if I want to wake up early for church, I can't, I struggle. But if I make an agreement with a friend the night before, all right, we'll pick each other up, let's wake up 6 a.m., I'll come to your house, pick you up, straight away I'll be there. Why? Because I have a motivation, I have something else. Like, that desire is replaced by another desire. So one practical way is that, I guess with the worldly desire, it has to be replaced by another desire.
Thanks, Bossy. Well, I actually think we're getting our first call for the night. Let's hear them.
Yeah, hello. Ah, Buddha Mark. How are
Hey,
you?
Buddha, how are we?
You guys, how you going?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much, guys, for the beautiful presentation this evening, and Bossy for the wonderful talk. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Abuna. We actually have some Slido questions in relation to Bossy's talk. So
Actually, a perfect time you came, Abuna. We've got one more question for you, if you don't mind, if you heard Bossy's talk. It was one of the points that was to put in effort. How do we know whether we've hit our ceiling or just too lazy to put in extra effort?
Yeah, look, I think that in our spiritual life, there's always more effort to be put in. We never reach a point where I've done enough. There's always more that I can be doing, and more progression that I can be making. We are on a journey, and this spiritual journey that we are on never reaches completion until the day of our death. And so we can always put more effort in. We can always work harder. We can always strive to perfection, to be more like Christ. So, and it's enjoyable. It's spiritual effort, enjoyable. It's not a chore. It's something that is cherished. It's a relationship.
Okay, there's actually one more question, Bonnie. You're very popular since you've come on here. How do we learn to desire God when we lack the motivation in our spiritual life?
Yeah. You know, Kristen, I think that we know when something is good for us, and that's important to recognize. Like, if I want to be fitter and healthier, I recognize that going to the gym is important and will get good outcomes for me. Whether I lack the motivation or I can bother or I can't be bothered, I know as a fact that it's valuable, and so I can push forward to the things that I know will reap good results. And so it's the same for a spiritual life. Sometimes we don't have the motivation, but we know that this is a critical component of our life, and any effort we put in will reap tremendous results and have effect on the way we live our life. And because we know that to be true, then we push ourselves into the initial stages of effort, pushing ourselves beyond the lack of motivation that may be there.
Thank you, Bono. I agree. We're actually getting a call on the line. I think it's a question for you, Bono. Are they there?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, guys. Loving the show. Hi, Abuna.
Alan. Hello.
Hi.
What's your question for Abuna, Alan?
Yeah, so this is a semi-spiritual question, but I've always wanted to ask it. So a lot of the times, like, if you know me, you know that I order a lot of food from Uber Eats and stuff, right? Now, basically, like, sometimes I would order, like, a lot of, like, HSPs and snack packs, and I would order, for example, like, chicken, right? But it would come as beef. Now, I would really enjoy the chicken. Like, I would really, really enjoy it, right? But I know for a fact that if I message Uber, they will give me my money back. Now, I still message them, but I feel bad. Now, is it wrong to ask for your money back, even though you enjoyed the meal? Or, like, I don't know, like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, look, I think that's definitely a grey area in life, and life is full of grey areas where sometimes you can get away with something quite clearly, but it's up to our own strictness that we may take that as an opportunity to say, you know what, let me apply a higher level of honesty to my life in order to reap the rewards of that. So yes, you can get the money back, but it can be an opportunity to take a good spiritual step where nobody can see, just you and God, to take a higher step in level of practicing honesty.
Yeah. No, that's actually a perfect answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Enjoyed the chicken.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. I'll just see if there's any more questions. I think that's all the questions for now, but Bossy, do you have any questions for Abuna?
Abuna, been listening to your Bible study, Song of Solomon. Tell us something about it.
No, Boss, look, I think you know the topic that you discussed today is really important for our current time, and you raised some really beautiful points, and especially I love the link to the liturgy. That the liturgy is a place where we can come to find that our fears disappear, because you know in the topic that you're talking about with the fearful disciples, two of those disciples that were very fearful were the two disciples that left Jerusalem after the crucifixion and headed to the village of Emmaus. And the reason they would have been heading to Emmaus is because of their fear. They wanted to leave Jerusalem. The others were hiding, whereas those two left completely. And our Lord Jesus Christ met them up the way, and as you know, the story goes on that he began to explain to the scripture from the Old Testament all the way through to the New Testament. And then he disappears from them at a very critical point. He disappears when they had sat down bread. Yeah. Now, you would think that him disappearing at that particular moment is quite odd. Actually, they begin to realize who he was once that bread was broken. And so as he disappears at that particular moment, he makes clear to them that this is how he will be present with them in the future. And so when that event happened, they then turned back to Jerusalem. The fear had disappeared. They headed back to Jerusalem, joined others in the upper room. And so they had left because of fear. Their fear disappeared in the breaking of bread, and then they returned back. And so it is the same for us, I think, Bossy, as you said, the liturgy, you can find that our fears disappear as we recognize Christ in the breaking of the bread. So thank you for that, Bossy.
Thanks, Abuna. Maybe, you know, since you're here, we'll just ask you another question. Some people say, I guess, we don't have the same chance as the disciples did. You know, they always say, look, Christ arose and he appeared to them specifically. And people today will say, well, look, I haven't had that chance to encounter him physically. What's a nice way to kind of address that point?
Yeah. Now, look, I think what the disciples had experienced, we are also experiencing. The disciples experienced the coming of the Holy Spirit, and that is something that we all experience, the work and the power of the Holy Spirit in life. And also, as I mentioned, as Christ disappeared from them, he disappeared from them at the moment the bread was being broken, to point to the fact that this is how he will now be present with them. Yeah, and so we have that mystery. We have access to that mystery, the breaking of the bread, the Eucharist, the mysteries of the church. So I think we do have the same level of access as the disciples would have had. Our opportunity for relationship with Christ is not hindered because he is not here in the flesh, but he has pointed to the fact that he will be with us in the breaking of bread, and of course by sending us the Holy Spirit to dwell within us. So I think we can really change the way we think, that we have full access to all the mysteries of God, and the opportunity for our relationship with Christ is great.
Thank you so much, Abuna. Please pray for us, and we really hope to see you soon. Well, that actually brings us to the end of our 7th episode. Thanks so much for joining us, Bossy and Abuna Mark. I'm sure we've all learned something that we can take through to next week. Thank you, everyone around the world and at home for joining us on Lighthouse tonight. Don't forget to tune in next week.
Yeah, we hope you're all having an amazing holy 50 days.
I'm Kristen.
I'm Chris.
And you're watching Lighthouse.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.